we have meetings tonight and can't enjoy it.
Say it's really good color when it does this. It gets us all for the spring, and it's like, oh man.
My son's favorite activity is to go out. We have an old rotary mower. He loves to go out and put his work and mow. So he was doing that this afternoon.
You got me sitting in a certain spot. So on
situation since this is our first round.
Okay. The instructions, I think, said you do.
And I want to thank Katie Cable because she's coaching me through this right now. So I want to thank her. Katie, thank you for being with us tonight. There you are. Appreciate
You're
that.
welcome.
Okay.
Oh, good. And the audio works too. And it's good. Thank you.
Okay, let's do a roll call, and then I think we want to amend this agenda, and I'm not sure whether I should do that before elections or after elections. And David, I want you to run the presidential election when we get settled there. But let's do roll call. Let's get that out of the way, Todd.
So forgive me if I butcher your name, okay? Sure. Dr. Bothwell,
Yes.
Jerry Codwell,
Yes.
Josh Courtney,
Present.
Frank Hicks,
Here.
let's see, Jim McWhirter, we have not, I made a call out and
He's done.
yeah,
on the
he's done
council.
and I have not received a call back on who's going to take that spot.
Okay, for sweet, sir.
Okay. Pat Nevers, John Pearson,
Here.
Karen Pullen,
Here.
Dr. Diana Richmond,
Here.
Clayton Schultz,
Here.
Ron Stewart, Raymond Bear,
Here.
Randy Atkins.
Yes.
Didn't miss anybody, right? Okay.
Okay. Mr. Glickfield, would you, if we're going to amend this agenda, would you recommend we do that before or after the election of the officers?
After.
Okay, so I'm going to let you, if you would please conduct the election of the president.
Yes, I'll be happy to do that. First step then would be to have motions for nominations for the office of president.
I would nominate Mr. Atkins.
Do we have a second?
A second.
Do we have any other nominations?
I move the nominations be closed.
Sorry, closed.
I move the nominations be closed.
Do we have a second for that?
Second.
Very good. You want to do a roll call?
Dr. Bothwell,
Yes.
Jerry Caudell,
Yes.
Josh Courtney,
Yes.
Frank Hicks,
Yes.
John Pearson,
Yes.
Karen Pullen,
Yes.
Dana Richmond,
Yes.
Clayton Schultz,
Yes.
Raymond Fair,
Yes.
and of course Randy Atkins.
Thank you for your support. I can't say I've had any fun in the last year, but at least I think we've tackled a lot of things, and I appreciate this commission's support for the issues that we've dealt with. So I want to thank you, and we'll do the best we can to serve at least another year for Grant County.
Congratulations.
I'm sorry?
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you, Clayton. Okay, with that being said, we'll open the nominations for the vice president position.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Bothwell, Dr. Bothwell.
Second.
Okay, so we have a nomination from Jerry Cottle for Bob Bothwell, Dr. Bothwell. We have a second from Dana Richmond. Any
I move
other?
the nominations be closed.
We have a motion to close the nominations by Dana Richmond. Do we have a second to close nominations? Second from Frank Hicks to close nominations. Can we have a roll call vote, please? Mr. Glancy?
Dr. Bothwell,
Yes.
Jerry Caudell,
Yes.
Josh Courtney,
Yes.
Frank Hicks,
Yes.
John Pearson,
Yes.
Karen Pullen,
Yes.
Dr. Dane Richmond,
Yes.
Clayton Schultz,
Yes.
Raymond Bear,
Yes.
Randy Atkins.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. I'll do my best to assist you in whatever way I can to help the commission as always.
Yes.
So would now be the time to amend the,
Yes.
okay. So I would like to propose a couple amendments to the agenda. Do we need to act on these independently, separately?
But yeah,
Okay, so the first amendment that I would put out there for change would be, we need to adopt the annual meeting schedule that's in your packet. I do not believe it's on this agenda. So I'd entertain a motion.
Are we not doing executive committee?
Yeah.
Nope.
Oh, we're doing this.
We're going to amend, if we're going to amend the agenda, I'd like to do that before we move towards the executive committee. That's based on Mr. Glickfield's recommendation. Something?
What was it that you were recommending?
We have, in your packet, you have a annual meeting schedule. And we post this every year to the newspapers so that they can have an idea when our meetings are. And it is not on our agenda, but we need to approve this. So I'm asking for a motion to add the approval of the annual meeting schedule to the agenda.
And do you want to act on that at this time? We're going to put it on the agenda. Should we go ahead? I would move that.
put it on the agenda, then vote on it.
That we amend that, and I would secondarily then move that, since we have moved it to the agenda,
Okay?
that we approve.
Okay. So Dr. Bothwell is recommending that we not only approve it to be on the agenda, but we also approve it as presented. So we have a motion for that. Dr. Bothwell?
So
A second.
We have a second from Mrs. Pullen. Okay. Roll call vote. I know we're moving too quick here, Mr. Glantz. You gotta slow down.
I'm keeping up. Oh, yeah, when I get behind. Dr. Bothwell,
yes.
Jerry Caudell,
Yes.
Josh Courtney,
Yes.
Frank Hicks,
Yes.
John Pearson,
Yes.
Karen Poland,
Yes.
Dr. Diane
Dana. Yes.
Clayton Schultz,
Yes.
and Randy Atkins. Raymond Baird.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. We have a meeting schedule for the year. I guess the second amendment to the agenda that I would entertain is the Area Planning Commission went into an executive session on the 29th of January to interview 3 candidates that applied for this position. And I would entertain a motion from this commission, if we so choose tonight, to approve an executive director for the Area Planning Commission in Grant County.
I'll make a motion to approve Mr. Glancy for the
Okay.
director.
So Mr. Courtney has made a motion to add that to the agenda and to recommend Todd Glancy as the next executive director to the Grant County Area Planning Commission. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Raymond, from Mr. Frank Hicks. Okay. Roll call vote.
Dr. Bothwell,
Yes.
Jerry Caudell,
Yes.
Josh Courtney,
Yes.
Frank Hicks,
Yes.
John Pearson,
Yes.
Karen Poland,
Yes.
Dr. Diane Richmond,
Yes.
Clayton Schultz,
Yes.
Raymond Baird,
Yes.
Randy Atkins.
Yes. Okay, congratulations, Todd.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Any comments you'd like to make in regard to a vision, or do you want to save that for your comments at the reports and resolutions part?
Yeah, I'm going at the report part. I did send that out by email. I know it was really late, like yesterday or something. It's just taking me some time to gather thoughts and putting things together, especially with the comp plan. Most of that's for the comp plan.
Okay.
And then, that was a full page, so I didn't want to go on too much rambling on tonight. So, but I'll put some more goals together for everyone. So I appreciate it.
So
I
that's,
hope I can do a good job.
we're going to We're gonna count on you.
Okay.
And we'll give you all the support that we can possibly give you.
And of course, not only to this board, but also to the public, I'm big on feedback. As long as it's good, constructive feedback, I take that and move forward with it, okay? So, open door.
So with this decision we've just made, commission members, now that leaves us with a vacancy at the executive administrative assistant's position. So I'm assuming that we will want to move forward with posting that position. Everybody?
Please.
Okay. All right. Okay. Okay, we will move to item 3.3, discussion and selection of executive committee appointments. Just a kind of an overview of where the executive committee this past year, the membership was the president, the vice president, a commission member, the council, county council member, and 2 at-large members. So that gave 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is less than a quorum, which is what our goal was for the executive committee. The executive committee, there are rules and procedures in regard to when we meet and how we post those situations. We're going to have to create a spot for Mr. Stewart.
Was I not expected?
Well, I don't know.
Rob, you sit here also.
I'll pull up a chair right here. It's okay. Get in here, Noah.
Thanks, Ron, for coming tonight. So I guess the question for the commission is, do we want to keep the same structure? I don't know that we're required to do that. Mr. Soltz.
Well, a while ago, we discussed having a secretary as an officer as well, and I'd like to see them. If we have a secretary, I think it makes sense that they also be on the executive committee, maybe as one of the defined members.
What we may have missed in that discussion, Clayton, was the fact that the executive director is actually identified as the secretary to not only the Board of Zoning Appeals, but the Area Plan Commission as well. And I think it's been past practice that the minutes and so forth come out of that office. Any thoughts about that, Mr. Glancy?
I believe that's what it states in the Indiana code.
Oh, Indiana code, okay.
Okay. So any other thoughts, Clayton, in regard to the membership of the executive committee that you'd like to?
6 seems like a lot for an executive, supposed to be nimble team. But
Our rules do state that any decisions made by the executive committee must be in full agreement, that if one member of that committee would choose not to agree with the others, then it would come back to the commission for a final decision. Is that correct, Bob?
That's correct. I would like for us to consider taking away as many automatic positions as we have, make everybody eligible. The president, vice president needs to be there for sure, but I'd like the other, I'd like for it to be 3 rather than 4. We have a committee of 5, but there'd be 3 elected at large.
And that's not intended to, take a swipe at you, Frank. I think you should be eligible to be there, and Ron, you as well. But as far as being automatically on,
I would like to see us go to president, vice president, and 3 elected at large. That's what we had done in the past up until just very recently.
Commission members, any comments to Dr. Bothwell's proposal there? We need a motion on that, David, if we're going to change that.
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion, commission members? Yes. Do we have a motion to follow Dr. Bothwell's proposal of having the vice president, the president of the, and then 3 at-large members to the executive committee. Have a motion for that?
I so move.
Motion from Mrs. Richmond. Do we have a second?
Second.
A second from Mr. Schultz. Commission members discussion? Okay. Roll call vote?
Dr. Bothwell,
Yes.
Jerry Caudell,
Yes.
Josh Courtney,
Yes.
Frank Hicks,
Yes.
John Pearson,
Yes.
Karen Poland, Ms. Richmond,
Yes.
Clayton Schultz,
Yes.
Raymond Bear,
Yes.
Randy Atkins.
Yes.
Need Mr. Stewart too.
Ron Stewart.
Oh, Ron Stewart. I had him
Am I
marked
not
up.
on this committee? Honestly, I'm asking for real.
Yes, you were. Yeah, you.
So I'm very sorry I had you marked out when you were
Are
absent
you
again.
talking about the
Sorry.
commission, Ron?
Ron absent.
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
We have made any
I
changes.
thought we decided that. I was just checking. Yes.
I'm very sorry. Apologize.
On the executive committee that we're talking about right now, we just made a motion to have the president, the vice president, 3 at large.
I understand.
Okay, so I'm assuming that now
And your vote?
Yes.
Okay.
so now I'm going to assume that we're going to open up nominations for the at-large positions, do them individually.
Yes, till we get to 3.
Okay. So the floor is open for a motion for at-large of the executive committee.
Nominate Mr. Cardiel.
Sorry?
I nominate Mr. Cardiel.
Yeah, me too. Second.
So we have a motion from Mr. Schultz to nominate Jerry Cottle as an at-large member of the executive committee. A second by Dr. Bothwell. I'll let you catch your breath there, Todd, and we'll do a roll call.
Okay. Dr. Bothwell,
Yes.
Jerry Caudell,
Yes.
Josh Courtney,
Yes.
Frank Hicks,
Yes.
John Pearson,
Yes.
Karen Poland,
Yes.
Ms. Richmond,
Yes.
Clayton Schultz,
Yes.
Ron Stewart,
Yes.
Raymond Bear,
Yes.
Randy Atkins.
Yes. Okay, we'll open the floor for motions for the second, another at-large member of the executive committee.
I'd recommend Mr. Hicks.
I second Mr. Hicks.
Okay, so we have a motion from Dr. Bothwell for Frank Hicks. We have a second from Ron Stewart for Frank Hicks. Any discussion, commission members? Hearing none. Roll call vote.
Dr. Bothwell,
Yes.
Jerry Caudell,
Yes.
Josh Courtney,
Yes.
Frank Hicks. So that's Frank Hicks. John Pearson,
Yes.
Karen Poland,
Yes.
Ms. Richmond,
Dana. Dana Tribb, you're up.
I'm sorry.
You voting yes?
Oh, yes.
Sorry about the sidebar.
Clayton Schultz,
Yes.
Ron Stewart,
Yes.
Raymond Bear,
Yes.
Randy Atkins.
Yes. Okay, so we have the last at-large position for the executive committee. Nominations are open.
I'd like to nominate John Pearson.
A nomination from Mrs. Richmond for John Pearson to serve on at-large executive committee.
I'll second that.
Have a second from
Me or Frank, either one.
Frank Hicks for John Pearson to serve. Any discussion, commission members? Roll call vote.
Dr. Bothwell,
Yes.
Jerry Caudell,
Yes.
Josh Courtney,
Yes.
Frank Hicks,
Yes.
John Pearson, Karen Poland,
Yes.
Ms. Richmond,
Yes.
Clayton Schultz,
Yes.
Ron Stewart,
Yes.
Aaron Bear,
Yes.
Randy Atkins.
Yes. Okay, so that makes the membership of the executive committee Mr. Atkins, Mr. Bothwell, Mr. Cottle, Mr. Hicks, and Mr. Pearson. Well, thank you guys. My personal feeling is we will limit any activity of the executive committee unless it's absolutely necessary. I believe that we need the input of all commission members rather than give the decision-making power to only a few of us. So that would be my mission. Okay. All right, we will move to item number 4, approval of the minutes. In your packets, you had the minutes of the December 2nd executive session. I thank Dr. Bothwell for putting those together for us. So review those, entertain a motion.
Could we maybe do both sets of minutes together?
Commission chooses to do so, we could do that. So we got proposed by Dr. Bothwell that we look at the regular December 2nd minutes as well. I know we've got some corrections on here though, Bob.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't realize.
Let's do them separately. Let's do the executive session December 2nd, 2024 minutes.
A motion to accept the executive meeting minutes from December 2nd, 2024.
A motion from Karen Pullen to accept the minutes of the executive session December 2nd. Do we have a second?
Second that.
Second by Mr. Pearson. Commission members, any discussion? We'll vote when you're ready, Mr. Glancy.
Dr. Bothwell,
Yes.
Jerry Caudill,
Yes.
Josh Courtney,
Yes.
Frank Hicks,
Yes.
John Pearson,
Yes.
Aaron Pullen,
Yes.
Ms. Richmond,
Yes.
Clayton Schultz,
Yes.
Ron Stewart,
Yes.
Randy Bear,
I'll stand whatever it is on here.
okay, Randy Atkins.
Yes. All right, motion passes. Okay, looking at the regular meeting minutes for December 2nd, 2024. On number 3, I did not vote, so we want to take my name off there. And then in number 4, we want to remove Dana Richmond and put Clayton Schultz as voted to approve that motion. And then we want to make Dana Richmond abstain. Right? So I guess the question is, do we, any other corrections to these minutes?
I think under number 10, I think I technically moved to terminate Aaron Ellsworth and it just died for lack of a second.
Okay. So Clayton Schultz made a motion rather than a discussion.
And then it would say died for lack of second, rather than no motion to approve.
So considering the number of changes to these minutes, would the commission propose that we have these changes made and approve them at the next meeting versus approving them with the changes now? Any thoughts on
Approve
that?
them with the changes.
I'm sorry?
I would make a motion to approve the minutes as currently changed.
Okay.
A second.
So Mrs. Richmond made a motion to approve the minutes with the proposed changes we've just made, seconded by Mr. Courtney. Are you pretty comfortable with those changes, Todd? Or you want me
Well-
to give you my sheet?
Yeah, I mean, just to make sure, I'd redo them and then have you vote on them again.
Okay.
I think that's the most stringent way to do it, with me being new.
Okay. What do we do about that, Mr. Glickfield?
I think I would have the changes made because there were so many and then vote on them at the next meeting. I think that's cleaner and probably going to be more accurate.
Yeah, I agree.
Mrs. Richmond, would you like to remove your
I'll
motion?
withdraw that.
Okay, so motion withdrawn. Mr. Courtney, withdraw your second? Okay, so we'll make these changes and we'll come back in the March meeting to approve those. Okay. Okay, moving on to number 5, new business. We have a solar ordinance 8 draft that's been provided to you folks in your packet, the commission members, and I believe it has been posted online on the Area Planning Commission website. And I guess I would like to entertain any discussion the commission members may have in regard to draft 8 of the solar ordinance at this time. Everyone's had the opportunity to review. Questions or comments? I would hope that the commission could agree to hold a special meeting before the public hearing, just so that if there are changes that we'd like to make, since it is a draft, without it being a formal situation, those changes could be given consideration before we go into a public hearing. And if the commission chose to have a special meeting, I think it'd be good for us to set a date for that meeting, whether it be in our next regular scheduled meeting or whether it be a special meeting. So I guess that's kind of where I'm at with item 5.1 and 5.2.
I have a question or a comment about that. I'm trying not to keep us too long on that. But the solar ordinance draft 8 that is being put before us, I don't know the origin of that. I don't know who the author, who put this together to bring to us. Has the commission, Mr. Stewart, and the commissioners, have they been involved in? I would like to see us. We are at a point, I think, that as we look at a draft, that we can work collegially with the commissioners rather than it becomes, somebody bringing this to us, we adopting this, we send it, Have they been involved? Have the commissioners been involved? And if they have not, could they, before we take any kind of action on it, could we have whoever it is that has drafted this include an opportunity for the commissioners to be involved and take a look at it even before we get this, so that we have an idea? I just think that we have an opportunity for first time in a long time to work in a collegial fashion. This has been so divisive for us over the last 18 months or so. This would be a great opportunity, I would think, at this point, to sit down and perhaps have Mr. Stewart himself or someone that might designate to sit with whoever it is that is putting this thing together and see if we can't come up with, something that everybody could agree with, and then bring that back for us to take a look at. In terms of the timelines that you're talking about, if we were to do that, that would take a little bit of time, and I would suggest that rather than a special meeting, that we do it at our next regular scheduled meeting in order to give time for the people who are responsible for draft 8 to be able to talk with the commissioners, see if the commissioners have any interest in reviewing it and talking with them and so on. But before I can support whatever there is here, I'd like to know where, did the commissioners ask? Have you folks had any input into this at all?
The only thing we've done is put a solar moratorium on.
Put a moratorium.
That's it.
I want to thank Ron for proposing the moratorium as the commissioners made that. And I think that gave us the opportunity. And I want to reflect back to the the previous commissioners had actually asked the commission to, they went into a moratorium with the understanding, or made a motion, I think in June or July, that there were some things that they wanted us to consider amending to the solar ordinance. So I think that that's what generated, to some degree, the need to give considerations to amending it. I believe there's a process in place for the commissioners. You help me, David.
Can I just explain?
Please.
The process, to refresh everyone's memory and those who are new. In June of last year, the Area Plan Commission decided, per the area-wide zoning ordinance, to issue a 6-month stoppage of any permits, basically stop the process, so that they may review the solar ordinance and come back and make recommendations. You passed a resolution which did that back in June, July, August, somewhere in there. So you then had public hearings on the various issues that were examined. Notes were taken at those public hearings, and then I believe Mr. Atkins, Mr. Hartman, and then they've asked me also for input on the ordinance. An ordinance, this sample ordinance was then drafted based on that. But remember, our function here is only recommendations to the commissioners. The commissioners then have to decide what they want to do with it. Now, the ordinance, the way it was written, is somewhat recommendation form. It will still have to be changed some then to fit into where it needs to go into the area-wide zoning ordinance, and it needs to be put in a proper form for the commissioners to pass. And I've not talked with Mr. Stewart about this yet, but I have talked with Commissioner Polling and Commissioner Middlesworth. They've had questions, and they've asked me about the ordinance, the process, and I think they're satisfied with what has happened so far.
That would be your understanding then?
Correct.
You guys have been involved then, some of you
Some of us, I guess, yeah.
apparently have been involved.
Bob, to answer your question regarding,
Author of
I'm going to go, yeah, I'm going to answer that.
you, Ed, and
Yeah, Ed and I worked on this, and the origin of this draft came from the discussion that we had, opening it up transparently to the people of Grant County to share their concerns, as well as the review of neighboring county ordinances. So it was a collective effort, not only from the voices of Grant County, but also from other ordinances that we've reviewed.
I knew that originally that was going on, but I didn't know, exactly where this was going. It's difficult. Well, I am in agreement with most of what my emails say is Grant County Solar. Not real sure exactly who Grant County Solar is. It's a combination of a lot of people. And in general, on my personal issue is that I agree with no solar, industrial solar on farm ground, et cetera, et cetera. But as I said here, it's not my personal sentiments about that issue or whatever. I'm a representative of a nonpartisan group of people, the education community of Grant County. And I need to act on facts. I need to act on without bias, et cetera. And that's hard to set yourself aside and act in an unbiased fashion. This has become a very biased kind of situation out here, and it's been strongly worked with and so on. And I know that Grant County Solar, and again, I don't really know exactly who I'm talking to, but I think it's probably most of the people that are here in the audience, and maybe several of us. I want to make sure that as we've moved on, and Grant County Solars, I'm sure on a partisan basis, are happy with the outcome of elections, those kinds of things. However, that does not mean, I don't think, that we should act strictly on
what Grant County Solar is doing, nor do I think that our commissioners need to be pressured that way. I think we need to work together. And I think we can do that at this point in time. And then come back. And I think Grant County Solar needs to be involved. I don't want them out. But whoever that is, if that's you, or if that's you, Ed, or Randy, or whatever, but I would like to see Grant County Solar, who has acknowledged that they put this together. I would like, before this comes before this body, I would like for you to make contact with the commissioners in a formal way, sit down with them, and to be able to come back and tell us that what we are looking at is something that we have agreement between the two bodies. I think we have a rare opportunity to put a very divisive kind of thing at rest and make it into something where we can work on a legal basis. I'd like to see us do that.
Mr. Stewart, considering Mr. Bothwell's comments, if you'd like to share those with the other commissioners, and if you have some input for the commission, we'd be more than happy to welcome.
Yep, I can do that.
Thank you. Okay, so I guess the question that I've got in regard to the agenda here is, does the commission want to have a meeting before the official public hearing to discuss this? Or where do we want to move from here?
I guess I'm confused. What do you mean by a meeting before the public hearing? I mean, how is that different than just discussing it as part of the agenda before we open it up?
A public hearing will result in the commission making a decision to approve, disapprove, or to have no comment after the public hearing is complete, having heard from the public input. A meeting prior to that would just give us the opportunity to have dialogue amongst ourselves with the public comments at the end, not an official public hearing. If we feel that we need more discussion than the official public hearing, where we will come out of it making a decision where we want to go towards the commissioners.
But not that night, right? We would go to the next meeting after a public hearing.
Correct.
We'd take it under advisement, so we're looking at 2 meetings. So we could do the discussion, I would think, at the meeting for the public hearing. I don't know. I don't see the need for it.
If there were adjustments that needed to be made, you'd have to have space in between to get the adjustment made to present to the public again.
That's correct.
So, I mean, there'd be a hesitation if you went into the public hearing and then had to make adjustments. You're prolonging the process. If you can make those adjustments before you go to the public hearing, you're done at the public hearing except for the vote. At
Correct.
the next meeting.
Yeah, the public hearing is, as it's presented,
Yes.
we're either going to approve it, unapprove it, or no. Is that right?
Without bias.
Am I getting that terminology right?
Yeah, the key is it's just recommendations
Okay,
to the
recommending.
commissioners. That's what this whole process is. That's what the ordinance gives you the authority to do, is to make recommendations.
Would the commissioners have to have a public hearing for their acceptance of it? Or?
All their hearings are public, and I'm sure they will.
Okay.
Now, the other thing I've asked Mr. Glancy to do is to take this draft to the Drainage Board and to the Soil Water Board, because there's components of this ordinance that those folks will have the responsibility of, and I don't think it's fair that we just throw this out there without at least them having the opportunity to review whatever impact it may have on them. And you did meet with the Drainage Board, is that correct, Mr. Glancy? And I think the Soil Water Board meeting is like the 3rd week in February, if I'm not mistaken, or somewhere in there. I mean, we probably ought to touch base. I don't know that we need to touch base with Highway Department. There's a lot of safety, public safety things built into this ordinance. Do you think the Health Board should have some exposure to this, Mr. Glickfield, since you're the attorney for the Health Board?
It certainly wouldn't hurt.
Okay. So, before we go into a public hearing, I'd sure like to at least get that exposure to the other other departments in the county.
That's what I'm looking at. That's what I've been trying to say. Let's include as many people as we can, and especially the commissioners.
Okay. So maybe we want to add this to the agenda of a regular meeting once we've had that interaction with the other departments in the county before moving to a public hearing. Mr. Beard.
This is my first time of really reading this, and it was given to me, and I tried to scan over all of it. I'm a slow reader. I had a couple questions or a couple comments without trying to put my political noose neck on the table. I'm not for big solar, but I am for green energy. And I hate for us to write an ordinance that prevents green energy from coming to Grant County. If we can power schools with green energy that's not toxic in the panel form or whatever reason, other reasons, I think we should accept green energy that doesn't put out a green carbon footprint. I don't know how, I haven't been involved with it with you guys like you have been for the last 18 months or however longer. But from looking at it, I had a few questions. Why do we not want batteries on them? What reason is there for not having batteries to store the energy at the facilities? Is there a reason?
I think the safety concerns would be.
From the chemicals in the batteries? No? The lithium? I just asking. I mean, I read it in here and I just wondered. I mean, if you're creating energy and you don't store it, then whatever you make has to go down the line, or what you're making is wasted.
I would anticipate that a battery ordinance would evolve at some point. I mean, when you think about out on the farm, we've got to have concrete dikes for our fuel tanks and our chemicals. You know, what would be any different than the chemical composition of a battery? You know, there has to be some sort of containment in the event that something occurred. And I would anticipate that at some point, a battery ordinance by this commission would be developed and proposed to the commissioners.
Or better batteries get developed. I mean,
And to answer your first comment there, Raymond, there's three different categories of this solar. There's the large scale, there's the middle scale, and then there's the residential. You know, so and I believe that, I mean, the ordinance goes that. Mr. Hartman, I would offer you the opportunity to speak to that in regard to Mr. Bear's questions, if you feel comfortable. If not, we'll wait till the end.
Okay. At the time, we felt that including batteries was going to be a lot more research and work, and that it might not be quite ready for us. There was a large battery fire in California. You may have seen it in the news. Lithium's pretty volatile. You've probably seen fires with it before, Teslas, for instance. But even a small lithium battery, if you were to puncture it, it may go on fire by itself. But anyway, battery, that's a big thing, I think, and requires a separate ordinance, and we didn't feel like we were ready for that at this time. So we opted to put it in as a no for now.
I didn't know if that limits the development of them. Again, I'm not for the big developments, but I would like, if communities or even a square mile could have a solar plant or solar, slip of the word, but it is a factory, it's producing electricity. If I could have that in the middle of the section and provide electricity for 20 houses around the outskirts of that mile, I just wish it was developed to a better degree than it is now. I understand the stopping of it now because of the contaminants in the batteries, contaminants in the panels, everything else that you hear. From my perception, I don't know why they don't combine water, wind, and solar all in the same area so that you're producing it pretty well, whatever the weather is doing. But again, I think a good battery is going to be needed. But you've answered that. I'm satisfied with your answer on the battery thing.
Yeah, because solar energy as well as wind is unreliable. You've got to have some form of storage or it's completely unworkable on large scale. If you're adding 2 or 3 or 4% output to the grid, it's not a significant number to cause you great problems. But if at some point in time you're up to 20 or 50% solar or wind, you got a big problem when there's neither.
Yeah.
So.
Well, would that not be when the battery would
kick in?
Yeah.
For how long?
Well,
yeah,
longer than nothing.
You could have days. You could have cloudy days where you get 25%.
Well, it's again where I mentioned the water. If it's raining, I don't understand why they can't incorporate turbines that are powered by a PVC pipe running the water to it. It doesn't seem like it's such a
hydro. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yes. Yes. I mean,
large scale hydro.
Well,
we used to do a lot of it, and we still do quite a bit.
I mean, even on a small scale, if you had the battery power to collect that power and store it, you don't necessarily need all that power when it's raining, but if you could power your house for a couple of days after it quit raining, and just
build reservoirs. Build reservoirs is another option.
To power the hydraulics or the
hydro.
Okay. I just don't want to put an ordinance out that's going to keep green energy from coming to Grant County when it can be used. I don't want to
It depends on
contaminate.
what green energy you're looking for.
Yes.
Small scale, here, small scale, residential, permitted by right, all zones.
Okay.
Okay. It's where you get into the medium density.
What would you consider Oak Hill High
75
School?
acres and large scale up to 400 acres.
Yeah.
Those have more regulations in here because there's more protections needed for the residents.
State that again, Ed. Large scale's 400 acres?
Yeah, large scale is up to 400, 75 to 400 acres. You'll see it in a chart in here. And then medium scale is 6 to 74.
6 to 74 acres.
Right. 5 and under is small scale, residential or commercial.
So I guess I got a question for a little clarification. The way this is proposed, is it stopping battery storage completely until something else is amended and added to this?
Or a different ordinance is developed for battery storage. I think that's a pretty big project if we're looking for large scale batteries at all.
Okay.
And you can have a battery storage project anywhere along the grid to store electricity.
Is this large scale only, or does that include the
residential?
Residential, you could have batteries.
Batteries.
Yes.
I guess
It's your risk, right?
Is that
small scale?
Would that person that had those batteries in their residence fall
Inside?
into some kind of hazardous material?
I mean, I wouldn't have them inside myself.
Well, I mean, on their premises. I mean, it'd be the same threat of getting into a water system if it were to fail and leach out.
I imagine we have those possibly now. I mean, some folks do. And I know some folks have had, lead acid batteries with their solar installations actually a long time ago.
From the 70s or 80s?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's where you're asking.
People trying to go off the grid.
That's where a new ordinance would come in. It would establish those safety regulations within that ordinance specifically for batteries.
So until we make that ordinance, all large-scale solar farms would be obsolete without batteries?
They would not have batteries.
Nobody's going to build a solar facility, large scale without.
Well, right now, there are a lot of large-scale solar facilities around this country that have no battery storage.
Correct.
But are they putting it into the system that's being
Yes, they do
stored
put
down?
it into the grid.
Okay.
And then the grid tries to regulate other sources of electricity, such as natural gas or coal up and down because they're trying to buy the solar. So they bring on natural gas or coal when it's, when solar is diminished because of clouds or nighttime.
But with battery storage, you don't have to worry about the clouds unless you're getting like 2-3 weeks of no
Yeah,
sun.
if you have like a cold come in with cloudy days, 3 days in a row with 0-degree temperature, you're out of batteries quick,
And the cold ones.
And then you better have a good alternate source. When you really get down to it, if you have to have a complete backup for one source of electricity, you maybe don't need that source of electricity. We didn't used to have it. It's just something to think about. It is an alternative source. I could argue green with anybody that huge amounts of pollution are created making these and bringing them to this country to sell and then disposing of them at the end of their life. Recycling them is expensive. Putting them in the dumps puts the chemicals in the dumps that will later leach out into groundwater.
So what's occurring right now, folks, would be the reason to have a meeting just to give you guys the opportunity to review this in a little greater depth and propose these questions.
We're at a meeting, we are.
Okay, but in respects to the time,
Is this online?
let me,
Is this online?
Yes.
Okay.
correct. Okay, so I guess what I'm asking is, how much time do we want to allot for it? It's 8 o'clock. We can propose another few minutes if you guys want some more discussion.
I have a question about process, I guess, that I want to clear. I think we're good with this. But I want to reemphasize that in the end, it's going to be a commissioner's decision.
It
as
is.
to what we do. And with respect to that, they did pass a moratorium at this point. We are still under that moratorium. Is it appropriate for us to be moving forward without, we need an explanation of whether or not the commissioners, the moratorium that you imposed, is it appropriate for us to go forward with this amendment process and so on, or did you mean for everything to cease?
It's probably a question for Mr. Glickfield, but I was under the understanding that when we put a moratorium in, that puts a stop to everything.
There's two things at play.
Okay.
We stopped the process last year. This board stopped the process last year by the power given to them through the area-wide zoning ordinance. That was a resolution that you passed. That expired at the end of the year. The commissioners then stepped up and said, because the ordinance wasn't quite ready to be presented, you guys hadn't had a chance to meet yet, they stepped up and said, we'll give you a little bit more time to finish your process. We'll put the moratorium in place. Is that a fair synopsis, Ron, of what you guys did?
But that's different.
They're waiting on the recommendations that come from APC, which is what this process is about.
And I don't doubt that may be correct. It sounds like very much that it should be. That is not what our commissioner representative just said. He said it was his impression when he voted on the moratorium that it would all stop. And if that were the case, and that we're working under, we would need, I would think, to go back before we go forward and clarify.
Yeah, I probably need to clarify on that, because if it's completely stopped, then we can't.
I was gonna say, how can we recommend anything?
I watched the meeting, Ron, where you made that recommendation, and Connor Sullivan came back the next meeting, and he had a rather lengthy resolution to support your moratorium, and that's probably the document that needs to be reviewed, but I don't think that I heard in there that everything stops. I really believe that it was put in place, as Mr. Glickfield has shared, for this body to have the opportunity to propose amendments, to propose to you guys an ordinance for your acknowledgement. But Mr. Connor put together, or Connor Sullivan, right? He put together a rather lengthy, he read that during that meeting, and
Now for one more legal.
please.
In fact, I would go as far as to say, if we don't take these recommendations to the commissioners, an argument could be had that we were acting outside of our scope and just basically stalling the process along.
We're not interested in that.
No, I
think we're ready to wrap the solar
Legally, that would be
thing up
very bad.
and move forward. I know Mr. Glancy.
Disagree, however, guys, we have the gentleman, you are president currently.
No, Shane
you're
is
not.
now.
Shane is?
Yeah, I was last year.
Okay, you were, you know, we have our representative, and he sees what they did as being different. All I'm saying is, we want to do this cleanly, and if there was, the commissioners, if there was a different thought that they had between individuals, you know.
Well, Mr. Boswell,
Make
that's
sure
my,
that we can go forward.
that's my.
I want to be able to
Mr.
do it.
Glickfield's saying that we can move forward then.
You agree with that?
Yes.
Okay, and you think that's
Correct.
council's intent?
Yep.
That answers the process, takes care of things for me.
So we're going to move forward. Okay. So we're back to the question. Do we want to have a special meeting to go in discussion before we go to a public hearing, or are you guys good with going to the public hearing? That's moving forward.
I'm good. Will we get the opportunity to discuss as a board after the public hearing? Or is it basically up for a vote right afterwards?
It seems like there's lots of questions. This ordinance is very lengthy, and there's a lot to it. It seems to me like you would want the opportunity to be able to study that ordinance, the recommendations that are contained in it, and then have questions answered ahead of the public hearing, because a public hearing could be quite lengthy. If you tag that on with your question and answer session, you might be here 3, 4, 5 hours. I don't know if you want to do that.
Yeah, I'm proposing that we have a meeting simply to discuss this ordinance. And there will be no action taken, so it's not required that we have a quorum. If you, commission members, so choose not to attend, that'd be fine. Because we won't take any action, it'll just be a discussion meeting. Moving towards a public hearing.
If and when we were to do that, is there a possibility of highlighting the differences between the recommendation that we gave and was rejected by the commissioners? What draft was that? Draft 7. Could we have a copy made highlighting the differences between draft 7 that we presented once before and the current draft 8? Some way to highlight so we know this is the change from draft 7 that we presented before, and this is the new.
I think there's been so much,
setbacks, whatever they have.
we're talking about 2 years ago, Bob. There's been a lot of new information in regard to industrial solar developments that have come about that have been taken into consideration with this ordinance that I don't believe was taken into consideration by the ordinance that the commissioners passed or the ordinance that this planning commission passed 2 years ago. I really don't understand the relevance of that. I think we have a document in front of us, and I think that's the document that we need to spend our time on working with.
So the ordinances that we passed was rejected, the ordinance that the commissioners did pass in a space of less than 2 years have become obsolete.
I believe so.
That's just what I'm asking. I think that's what I hear you say. And so we are convinced now that the draft that we have before us will be a living document. Has that been thought about putting it in for additional amendment? Like the Constitution of the United States,
I don't think that's our decision to make. I think that's the commissioner's decision to make. It's our responsibility to propose.
I'm just concerned about, in 18 months, the best work that we could do has become obsolete.
And the area-wide zoning ordinance gives you the ability to do the same thing you did in June of last year, to stop the process, investigate, and whatever the particular issues are, make recommendations to the commissioners.
It's just that things are so fluid, apparently, in this area, that when we adopt this, if and when we do that, we need to understand that it's not a perfect document, and that there will, probably within 5 years, need to be considerable work done with this whole area out here. As you say, green energy at this point is a grand experiment. It's really what is going on at this point. I'm not against green energy. I am against large-scale solar on farmland, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that so much is going on in this area, and it has become very partisan in our national politics as well. Things are going to change dramatically, and what we're doing here on the local level, may be good today and obsolete tomorrow. So I want to make sure that draft 8, as we entertain this, that we understand that this is with the best information that we currently have, that this is, where we go, but with the understanding that circumstances may change considerably within a couple of years, and we may be back to the drawing table.
Well, ordinances are always subject to amendment, Bob. At any point, there needs to be a change. I think we need to keep in mind that this ordinance derived from the input of the citizens of Grant County, as well as a review of ordinances of other counties.
I know.
Okay.
What will be the notice requirement of this meeting? Can it be next Monday, 2 Mondays from now? How much time? Because I almost feel like we need to set a date where we talk through everything and then the position of the board is made clear. We move it to the commissioners. People voted for the commissioners in office. Let's so that we can move towards comprehensive plan and other things that this board has to do. Let's hash it out. If we want to do a special meeting instead of a normal meeting, that's fine. It feels like we should get it taken care of relatively soon.
I agree with that.
I mean, is a week long enough to talk to the other? 2 weeks, I'd say 2 weeks, but that's President's Day. Are we okay meeting on President's Day?
Well, we've got to make sure that we don't have conflict with, number one, getting this room, and number two, with you folks as town board meetings. That's why we get kind of locked
We looked at
in.
that several years ago, trying to find a place. Back at the time, we were talking about moving our meeting from the first Monday to some other time. And at that time, it was the third Wednesday of the month was pretty much open. Did not come into conflict with everything else.
So Clayton, are you thinking in 2 weeks? Let Mr. Glancy and I check the availability of this and check the schedules, and we'll shoot out there at least 2 weeks. And then Todd can propose some dates to you folks through an email, and then we'll kind of run from there. We need 2 days to post it. I'd like to think we could give the community more time than just 2 days to know that we're going to have a meeting of this significance.
Especially since people came here probably wanting to talk about this. Yeah. It deserves to be talked about, and I have things I want to bring up, but I don't want to talk about it if we're just going to talk about them again. So,
all right. So we will schedule a meeting to discuss draft 8 before going into a public hearing, and we'll make a decision, hopefully, as a result of that meeting, when to set a public hearing. Okay. So we're going to move on to old business. Aaron Ellsworth. We had some discussion in the last meeting, the December meeting, in regard to this. I don't want to speak specifics in regard to the result of that situation. I'm just going to ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion to terminate Aaron Ellsworth.
Motion to terminate Aaron Ellsworth from Josh Courtney. We have a second from Dr. Bothwell? Any discussion, commission members? Roll call vote when you're ready, Mr. Glantz.
Dr. Bothwell,
Yes.
Jerry Caudell,
Yes.
Josh Courtney,
Yes.
Frank Hicks,
Yes.
John Pearson,
Yes.
Karen Pullen,
Yes.
Ms. Richmond,
Yes.
Clayton Schultz,
Yes.
Ron Stewart,
Temporarily.
He's out of the room.
Raymond Bear,
Yes.
Randy Atkins.
Yes. Okay, motion carries. Okay, we're gonna move to item 7. Attorney report, Mr. Glickfield.
I don't have much to add in the interest of time. I'll just say I told Mr. Glancy, please call me. I know this is a new undertaking for him, and I'll be happy to help him any way I can.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you for the support you give me, David, sitting in this chair. I
My
appreciate it.
pleasure.
Okay, Mr. Glancy.
You do, David.
I'm sorry, this is quite a bit here. Did everybody get my report from February 3rd through email? So one of the things that is like burning on us from a date standpoint and a grant standpoint, that's a $60,000 grant that's coming up to be able to get the comprehensive plan completed. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I contacted the people that are doing the consulting for the grant, and I really pushed them on due dates. What are the due dates? And so we started the grant on March 19th, 2024, and the completion date is June 30th of this year, 2025. And it will remain in effect until June 30th in 2026 and can be extended. So we've got some time, but let's try to get this wrapped up, right? And so the online survey, it was open when I wrote this. I checked yesterday and it's closed now. There were 215 people total. That's the 0.3% of the population of Grant County. And with 60% of the people, 130 of those residents from Upland. So we have a lot of representation from Upland. 2 community stakeholder conversations, and they're also called focus group sessions. When they name things different things, it just makes life more complicated when you're trying to work through this. Have been completed. One in Upland, Dr. Richmond, that was, you were involved in that? Okay, I made a little guess there. And thank you for that. And in Jonesboro, Mr. Schultz and Mr. Pearson, you both were involved in that.
We actually appointed people to represent the city.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We got those checked off. I appreciate that. So the consultants say they are able to host 2 to 3 additional community stakeholder conversations. And I have down kind of 4, which is Fairmount, Fowlerton combined, a Matthews, a Van Buren, and an ag-centered input, which would be the Farm Bureau board. And I talked to Chad Kirkpatrick today, and he's all on board for that. And so we can do that. I don't know. My question to you that I am proposing is, do you want me to push the consultants to be able to do 4, or do we want to combine something different or cut one of these 4?
You can probably cut Matthews because we have not found a single person that will be interested in doing this.
Josh, would you like to join Jerry at Van Buren or join Fairmount and Fowlerton?
Sure.
I think you probably need to have some representation. I strongly encourage that.
Maybe by Matthews and Van Buren.
I've got some people lined up. I emailed, not knowing, I emailed Katie some names that she was going to set up, and
Okay.
and I didn't know she until.
Yeah, that's fine.
But I do have some individuals that are interested.
So we want to combine, who do you want to You can join forces on either side. Fallerton,
They share the same school system,
Yeah,
so there is some commonality there.
Yeah, we'll work it out. We'll figure something out.
okay. So we're going to combine those two,
Yeah.
Matthews and Van Buren. Okay. And so those times will come from the consultants, and then I will get back with everyone else, right? Okay.
And Karen, I guess I did. I invited Joe Seward to represent Allerton with you guys.
And Karen, you're good? You have people?
I hope so.
Okay. And this will
Hey,
be,
people change their minds.
You never know.
and they're wanting to do virtual meetings on these. I assume we could use this room if the dates work out. I'm going to push them on the ag group. Chad said that there were, a lot of people don't like to do the virtual meetings. So I'm going to do my best to push them to at least come up for that one in person.
My personal feeling is if these folks want a live meeting, they need to come down.
Yeah, I agree.
So if you folks choose to have a live meeting, that's what we propose.
Okay. I will push.
You guys want a live meeting versus virtual?
I assume we
I would much rather have one.
Yeah,
Either talk.
I think so. I think you get a lot better interaction that way.
Correct.
Item E is a steering committee meeting in February. Put a little question mark in there. The agenda that they propose is a status update on the process, a refresher on the Okra plan requirement elements, a summary of the community visioning and input received to date, and a review and discussion of the draft project goals and strategies. I don't have a list of the steering committee. I'm on that steering committee as a citizen, so I don't have that list in front of me, but we'll try to get that done in February. Keep this thing moving.
If you can't find it, tell Matt to send you one because he should have one. They sent out the original invitations to the first steering committee meeting.
Let's see, then item F, first public workshop was completed at the fairgrounds on October 22nd, 2024. We're going to host a second public workshop at the end of March. This is what is proposed. We'll cover comments and feedback on the draft recommendations for each of the plan's elements and launch a second online survey during that workshop. And then early April, steering committee will meet again, review the draft plan. Into April, the draft plan will be submitted to Okra. Okra will take, they always say the 90 days is 30 to 90, but they said they'll take the 90 days. And at that point, that will put us into, as long as we get that to them in time, and they're the ones that's delaying it, it'll be easy to go in and get an extension so that we get the grant money. Okay? So that's what I know about the comprehensive plan. Was this helpful?
Thank you.
Okay. The other two things are pretty quick. The updates of fees, I know we wanted to have done and implemented on January 1st. The geo system that we use I need to be able to learn that and update it so it synchronizes our online payments for just in the office. Certainly wouldn't be fair to be charging people that come in the office in person one fee and people that are doing it online with credit card a different fee. So I need to get that fixed. That's on me.
So we're still on the old fees until we get those
Still on the old
online.
fees until I learn the system and be able to update that. I assume you agree.
Yes.
We don't need to pass it or anything, right? Agree?
You're talking about building permit fees, that sort of,
Right.
sorts of fees.
We approved the fees in a meeting. It's just we haven't implemented them yet.
I need to do some software update.
Yeah, I want to, not so sure that's not a commissioner function, but let me digest that a little bit. And then I'll get back with Todd on that.
Okay. Before we implement, you'll give us an answer.
Correct.
So the software updating actually come in handy.
Yes.
Yeah, good. And area plans last report of collections to the auditor was September of 2024, and the last report of permits to the assessor's office was in October 2024. We did make, I believe tomorrow we'll update the auditor's report for all of those months and for January. And then the assessor's office, I need to go back in and be able to pull out some data from Geo, I believe, okay? And a lot of this was due to, the server going down. So there were issues that were beyond anyone's control because some of these things were behind. I just kind of want to put that out there. I'm not pointing fingers anywhere. So we have things in hand and moving forward.
Yeah, I just have one more comment on the fees.
Yes.
I do think, the more I think about it, I think we should put a recommendation to the commissioners together and let them approve the fees. I think that's the process that needs to happen.
Do you have that information that Clayton had sent to Katie
Yes.
regarding that fee structure?
Yes, I have just a hard copy of it.
Then you'll want to go to Justin to get it on the agenda for the
Agenda.
commissioners.
Okay.
Is that right, Ron?
Yes.
Justin's still handling the agenda for you guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we don't need to make a motion for that?
I think it's already been approved, hasn't it?
Already been approved.
Yeah, no, you're just taking it to them to get final approval so
Okay.
you can implement it.
Okay?
Randy?
Yes.
Just for clarification, I talked to Commissioner Millsworth just a few minutes ago and about the moratorium. We want to get some clarification with Connor Sullivan on what that looks like, but we both agreed that we want to move forward with the ordinance. So we are ready to get this moved forward and get this put behind us. So whatever that looks like.
Okay.
So we're going to talk to Connor Sullivan and see what, because after I talked to Shane, then he was like, well, that makes sense. If we have a moratorium, then maybe we shouldn't be working on this. But we're going to talk to Mr. Sullivan, figure out what that process looks like. But Shane and I both agree that we would like to move forward with this ordinance. And we'll get some clarification on what that process looks like to see. The first moratorium we put on, if you'll remember, is when Commissioner Bardsley and Wright was commissioners. And this was in March or April when we made the motion. And I'm pretty sure that that's when we were told by previous council that the moratorium stops everything. So I think that's where I got that in my head, but that might not be the case. So I just think there's some ambiguity on it. I think it needs to be cleared up.
Okay. Thanks, Ron, for researching that for us.
Yep.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Glancy before we move to public discussion?
Thank you, sir.
Commission members, any comments, questions? All right, we will move to public discussion. I've got my little pitch here. Do we have a sign-up sheet up there in a pen? Okay, we're going to ask that you state your name and your address and sign in at the podium. We're going to limit your comments to 3 minutes if at all possible. We're going to ask that for the sake of time. Please refrain from stating people's names in your comments specifically. Please be respectful of the commission members and the public in attendance. Speaking from your seat will not be recognized or allowed. We thank you for your comments. So. Sorry?
Ed Hartman, 2640 East, 1050 South, Fairmount, Indiana. A couple comments. One is earlier in the meeting, we took a vote as to who would be on the executive committee. Very good. But you also need to take a vote on what can the executive committee do. According to state law, they're allowed to do continuances and anything else that you approve by a 2/3 vote. Not a simple majority of the membership, 2/3 vote. So you need to be thinking about what they can do and set that down in your minutes. Yeah, probably in the next meeting.
So Ed, you're saying code gives us the ability to define what it is that we want the function of that committee to do?
Yes. Okay. You're allowed to come up with what you think they should decide. And anyone that, as Dr. Bothwell mentioned, I believe, anyone on that committee who says they don't agree can take it to the full board and stop that from going forward just on the executive committee.
If I could on that topic.
I would, please let me finish. I'll be brief.
Well, it's to the point that you're making now.
Okay, go ahead.
The spirit of the law was that the executive committee would have the ability to make decisions in an emergency kind of a situation between board meetings and that kind of thing. It's not to be done in a flippant kind of way where the executive committee is trying to run things. And so, just so we all understand that that is in the code, we do have the right to do it. And in this case, it'll take 3 members at least to vote something. But I don't know that the executive committee in my time has ever made a decision. They come back and make a recommendation to the entire group, but it's always been the entire group. I think that's the intent of the spirit. So, sorry, Ed, go ahead.
That's fine. The other thing concerning state law, the process for drafting or amending an ordinance is very clearly laid out. And it separates the APC and the commissioners for a very good reason. You have a commissioner representative on your board, so of course there will be talk back and forth to the commissioners, but you are to do the ordinance creation or amendment on your own. If you have joint boards with the commissioners and the APC, depending on how things go, the APC may be intimidated because they don't have the last word. So in other words, they never get the chance to put forward their ideas. They are to put forward their ordinance and send it, if it has a favorable opinion, as a certified ordinance. Certified by state law. That ordinance, if the commissioners do not take it up, if they have to put it on a shelf and forget about it, on the 91st day, it is law, whether they liked it or not. That process gives the APC their time to put their ideas down, send them to the commissioners. The commissioners then have their time to go through it and amend it, accept it, or reject it. The process is clearly laid out. I would recommend you really follow state law. I don't want to develop an illegal ordinance based on we didn't follow the process laid out. Thank you.
Ed, I got a question. So you stating that, say this ordinance here, that we're putting forward, needs to be drafted up by us and then handed to the commissioners without
Yes.
the commissioners drafting it up and then handing it to us?
If you approve that with a favorable recommendation, it would go to the commissioners as a certified ordinance with a number. And if they amend it or reject it or accept it within 90 days, then they sign that.
Anybody can create an ordinance. It's when we certify it, is when we stamp it as the area plan commission to send to the commissioners.
Okay, so
Your vote may be favorable, unfavorable, or no recommendation. But either way, it'll go on to the commissioners with that recommendation.
So are the commissioners by state law allowed to draft something up and then hand it to the board for us to hand back to them?
Absolutely.
That's my question.
Yes. They could initiate an amendment to the area-wide zoning ordinance. And what you're looking at is an amendment to the area-wide zoning ordinance.
I think maybe the point of that is making it he's not in favor of the collegial kind of thing. But
No, that's
we're not
completely not acceptable
what we're
according to
talking
state
about
law.
here. I just want to clarify, you're not against us working with the commissioners and them having input. We still have the decision as to whether or not we're going to do this. We're going to make the decision. All I am suggesting is that we have, I think, a rare opportunity to work in a collegial fashion with these folks, and it reduces the adversarial kind of thing.
Well, you have one commissioner on your board for that reason. But you are not to be intimidated by another board. You're the APC. It is your job to do an ordinance.
Talking with just one person that they might designate to do that, but that's okay.
Yes, that means that one person can have ideas just like the rest of you. He is a member of your board by design.
For the sake of time, thank you, Ed. Anyone else?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Michael Duke, Grant County. There's a lot to unpack. I have one main point I want to make, and I hope everybody is awake and listening. Home rule. I made comments on this in the commissioners meeting this morning and in the previous BZA. Point out to develop awareness related to the discussion that is going on at the State General Assembly right now in their session. House Bill 1628, Senate Bill 425. If you are not aware of it, I would encourage you to become aware of the content of those, generally speaking. And I'm just going to say it very roughly. The State General Assembly is being proposed. It's being proposed to them by several representatives and senators that they rob the counties and the local communities of home rule on specific issues related to large infrastructure development or economic development projects. In particular, specific ones I've heard mentioned would be solar, would be data centers, anything that is affecting local community. This legislation would take away the ability of the local communities in their zoning ordinances and their governance to render an opinion and to provide input into the process or to protest the process, much as you have all seen happen with the solar issue here in our community. So if you want to be able to continue bantering among ourselves and deciding where we want to see our community regulate and manage our resources and our own economic development initiatives, be aware, voice your opinion. Again, Senate Bill 425, House Bill 1628. I think there's a House Bill 1624 that might relate to it. So, having said that, that's the point I wanted to make. I would also thank Mr. Clancy for his articulation of the master plan or status. That was a question I had, and I was going to ask if it hadn't been discussed yet for that to be. So, Mr. Clancy, thank you for that articulation and that illumination of where that is at and where it is going. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Anyone else?
Name was Jerry Souls, live at 11240 East, NOLS. I guess this solar draft aid ordinance has been proposed, it's been talked about, it's been discussed at meetings. It was my understanding that once it was implemented by the area plan, it was to be given to the commissioners. It was to either be approved or disapproved with a favorable or non-favorable vote. And it just seems like it just keeps getting delayed. Why does it keep getting delayed? Like I said, we've got a commissioner on board. The job of the area plan is to make favorable recommendations or non-favorable for this ordinance. for this draft of this ordinance. And it just seems it just keeps going on and dragging out to another meeting, to another time. When is the county going to start, the Area Plan Commission, the BZA, the commissioners, and everybody do their job like they're supposed to, in unison, together? It's the reason there's all these boards and everybody's set up checks and balances. And it just seems like it just keeps getting checked and never balanced out. And I guess that's the only thing I've got to say is why the community's involved. You've got citizens here, citizens who've spoken and said what they want in this draft and different things. Why is it not being presented? Why is it not being voted on or given a favorable or non-favorable recommendation and then given to the commissioners like it's supposed to go? You start with step 1, step 2, step 3, and the final step. I don't have a bunch of formal education, but I've had a lot of business education, and you go through certain steps to get to the end result. If you don't do all those steps, you don't get the end result. It never happens. And that's what's been going on, the way I look at it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jerry.
Hello, Roy Cree. One of the questions I wanted to ask is, if I can, ask legal counsel, Mr. Glickfield, originally when they had the 6 months to modify the ordinance, and I don't remember the details, you were strict on the 6 months. It had to be done in the 6 months, and I don't understand what had to happen if that 6 months didn't, if it didn't get done in that 6 months.
I'll leave that up to you, Dave, as to whether you want to answer or not.
Yeah, that's fine.
Roy, what we try to do is hold the legal counsel to the commission.
Yeah, all right, that's fine. I mean, can you answer the question? Originally, you gave your assurance to the committee that it would be done in 6 months. And it was important that it be done in 6 months, but I don't remember if it wasn't, what the consequence was.
What I think I assured was that we would have a application in 6 months, because that's what we actually, if I'm recalling correctly, that we were moving towards. And I think reasonably that an application should derive from an ordinance. And since we have an ordinance now in the draft form, it makes more sense to approve the ordinance and then tailor the application to meet the ordinance. So
I recall it being a modification of the ordinance itself, but you may be right. The second question that I wanted to address basically is the development of this ordinance and the people that have developed it. I mean, they both have farming interests. They're both rent farm ground. There was no landlords had any input on any of it, just the tenant. And of course, it's a conflict of interest with these guys that go out and rent ground as opposed to the landlords renting it to a solar company. Obviously their interest is to keep their rents as low as they can so they can make a profit. Obviously the landlord's position would be to probably, get the most input that they could for their ground, a fair price, what the market would demand. So I'm concerned about the conflict of interest that the draft of this ordinance has obviously had as it's being drafted. And I just was able to scan it just very, very quickly. So I'm sure I'm not complete on it, but a couple of the things that are in there is the taking of the land, basically, of these farmers. The one piece that we talked about in this meeting in a lot of detail was the tile, where they wanted to increase the set aside more than what the easement is for a tile. The easement is 75 feet on both sides of it. They wanted to increase it to 150 feet. I see that it's in that ordinance, the draft, as appears. It's not justified. We've talked about that in great detail, but it's not justified. 2-foot pile of dirt, if you remember the conversation. So anyway, taking of that land without any justification or any compensation to the landowners. It's taking that land from those landowners. I can't use it for what I want to use it for, so you're taking it from me. The same way with the set aside, the setback, I'm sorry, not set aside, setback that's in the ordinance. I think it was 500 feet now, as opposed to the 300 that was in the original ordinance, or 750 if it's on the second side. Again, no justification any of the speakers had for that amount of money or that amount of distance. It's just a random number that they wanted to, in my opinion, inflict maximum pain. But again, taking of the ground without any compensation to the landowners that own that ground. And it's not, there's no justification. I'd love to hear justification other than I don't want my grandchildren to see it. Even though there's a buffer strip, they'll never be able to see it. But, it's still got that set aside back in the ground back from the residences from 500 and 750 feet. It just makes no, it can't make logical sense to any of you. So, thank you.
Thank you, Roy. Anyone else? A couple more?
I'm Andy Ellis, and I don't believe I've got a working pen here. 8320 East Jefferson Place, Fairmount, Indiana. Yeah, a pencil. And I just wanted to just reiterate a couple things, and I'll try to be brief because I know everybody's tired. I have glanced through draft 8 as it's been proposed, and I want to thank everybody who's had a hand in putting it together. And what I'd like to say is a member of the community that highly represents what the community's been saying for the past almost 3 years. And it reflects what the community has asked this group to represent us. And I'm not a scholar on how the process works, but I believe this group is the one that puts together the draft. And they don't pull in others into a group session. This is your responsibility through people that are helping you with this. And then you send that to the commissioners. And I know I'm just reiterating what's already been stated by people that are more articulate than me, but I believe that is the process. And for us to not go ahead and get it done like we've been trying to do after all this time. We've been accused of trying to drag our feet. We just wanted to have something that represents the community. And to some of the commission members' questions in terms of discouraging green energy or the industrial solar, I believe that the ordinance has provisions in there to develop high impact zones where we think that these type of developments should go. I agree with what was stated, that having them next to our current power facilities makes an awful lot of sense. You got the grid there, you got the connections there, and it can be supplemental in those locations. So a lot of us have been saying brownfield locations, which are available, would be a great place to develop these and not take away from our personal resources that we have. So I just want to say I'm one person of the community that would encourage us to go forward with draft 8, get our public hearings done, present it to the commissioners for them to do their job. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. One more, please. One more. You'd like?
Ted Otis.
Anybody that's interested, you should go look to see what the carbon footprint of a Chinese-built solar panel is. I can always never remember what I want to talk about when I get up here. There was something else. I'm sorry, I can't think what it was. But anyway, he is the only person here tonight that I could hear. I think we need to fix it.
You couldn't hear me, Ted?
Well, I didn't want to tell you because it won't make you feel good.
I gotta get my teacher voice going then.
Well, the other thing I like to take is you can't get microphones, gotta get those captioning on the TVs.
I'll check and see if we can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Those good microphones a long time ago.
All right. At this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Got a motion from Mrs. Richmond, second from Mr. Bothwell. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you, everyone.
That's a problem. We should have.
I'm stuck on this new chill.
You just gotta hide it from your wife.
Thank you, Robert.
As contrary as I am, those are just questions.
And you're okay. All right. Thank you guys for helping. He's got them, Bob. Josh will take those, or he'll give them to you, one or the other. Thanks, Josh. There's a box down there.
I'm in trouble anyway. I got now.
I got me quick.
Have one
Yeah, that's true.